TFA Fam, it's your boy Kev back here with another video. Today we're going to discuss some late round guys you should be looking at. I know it's only May, but it's a good time to start getting the process rolling. Redraft season only is a few months away, so I figured we'd start off with a little, a couple of guys that we should be looking at, paying attention to, keeping on your radar before draft season gets here. So we're going to do that right now. Let's go. All right, before we jump into the content, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for future content. We got a lot of stuff coming out. We're going to be doing updating our rankings with post-draft, post-free agency for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. We got a lot of other stuff coming. We're going to do a lot of player versus player, kind of players that are similar in ADP. So to make sure you get all that great content, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications, and let's just jump right into it, shall we? All right, starting things off, we'll start with the wide receiver position, then we'll move into some running backs. I don't like to use the word sleeper because I think it's overused. And let's be honest, in this day and age, with as much content as we have, there's really no such thing as a sleeper anymore. To me, it's more just like late round guys I think you should be looking at, and guys that are probably being a little bit undervalued. So I'm going to start off with my guy, Darnell Mooney from the Chicago Bears. Last season, he had a 76% snap share, 98 targets, which was 36th among all wide receivers, 16% target share, 1,157 air yards, 23 deep targets, which was 11th, 61 receptions, 631 yards, 4 touchdowns, 9.4 fantasy points per game. He also had a 1.22 yard per reception, and he also had a nice 1.77 target separation. He did all this in his rookie year where he really wasn't on a lot of people's radars heading into last season. He was somebody that I liked coming out of college, and the dude is super athletic, ran a 4.3 coming out of college. So, and last year they did it with Nick Foles and Mr. Trubisky at quarterback. This year, they bring in Andy Dalton, and as we know, they drafted Justin Fields. I feel like there's a really good chance Justin Fields is going to be starting sooner rather than later. He could easily start day one over Andy Dalton. They really don't owe him anything. So I absolutely love Darnell Mooney this year. I think he's locked in as their wide receiver too. They didn't really do much to address that position. Anthony Miller could possibly be traded as well. So I love Darnell Mooney as kind of that late round guy right now for them, especially in an offense which is likely going to have Justin Fields, which is a massive upgrade over what they had last year. So I kind of like the Bears offense a little bit. It's kind of a low-key buy situation because outside of Allen Robinson, this offense isn't being overly valued, and I don't think it's really going to change as we get closer to August. Moving on, let's talk about Michael Pittman from the Colts, another second-year wide receiver. He played 79% of the snaps last year. He was 60 targets, 13% target share, 518 air yards. He did have 7 deep targets, but only 7.6 fantasy points per game. He did have 290 yards after the catch, which is something I like to see. 40 receptions, 503 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have a 12.6 yard per reception, but at 8.4 yards per target and a 1.43 yards per route run. Listen, that offense last year, had Phillip Rivers. Old man Rivers was still there last year. Now they have Carson Wentz. They didn't really do a whole lot either to upgrade this offense in terms of the pass catchers either. They brought back T.Y. Hilton. Another guy that I think you should also be looking at, we could talk about in the same conversation, is Paris Campbell. The problem with Paris Campbell is super athletic guy, but the last 2 years hasn't been able to stay healthy. He only played 1 game in 2020 where he had 6 receptions for 71 yards and then got hurt. I think he ran 1 route and got hurt last year. Then the year before, he only played in 7 games in 2019. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. But I feel like these guys, Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell, have the ability to be the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in this offense. They brought back Mo Alley Cox. They signed Eric Fisher today, who is coming off a blown Achilles. It happened in January but he was released by the Chiefs and now picked up, former ties there with Chris Ballard, who used to be with Kansas City, who's now the GM of the Colts. But both these wide receivers have a lot of upside, and I think this offense is going to be I think it's going to be better than what it was last year. I know people are still really soured on Carson Wentz. You look where he's going right now, and like best ball drafts, I've been doing some stuff. He's kind of going at quarterback 19, 20, 21, 22. There's not a lot of excitement around Carson Wentz because of how poorly he played last year, but I think this offense is a buying opportunity right now, especially for Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell. These are likely the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in this offense, and with T.Y. Hilton, factoring in as well. But I think that there's lots to like here with both of these guys. So So I'm buying both these guys where I can get them. I think Michael Pittman has a chance to probably go maybe 8th, 9th round, where you see Paris Campbell go 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th round. So I like both these guys kind of later round targets, and I think with a lot of upside. So last but not least, let's talk about Tre'Quan Smith. He's somebody that we've kind of been waiting also to kind of break out in New Orleans. Last year, he had 34 receptions, 448 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7.9 fantasy points per game on 50 targets, only 11% target share. He did play 50% of the snaps from the slot, with only a 1.19 yard per reception or yard per route run and 13.2 yards per reception. Now, the last couple of years, he's been playing with Drew Brees. Now, Drew Brees isn't the same quarterback that he was earlier in his career. Not that he's been terrible, but he was much more of a short to intermediate passer. I think now when you add Jameis, who I believe is going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints, and I think Tre'Quan, now with no Emmanuel Sanders, they didn't do a whole lot again and through the draft or free agency to address this position. So Tre'Quan could easily be the number 2 wide receiver next to Michael Thomas, and an offense that should be just as exciting as what we've seen. And now with, hopefully the infusion of Jameis Winston and kind of that D-gap attitude, he'll be looking to go deep to hit Tre'Quan on some of these routes that that we've kind of thought he was going to be, that kind of this deep ball guy, but he just really hasn't had the opportunity with Drew Brees at quarterback. So he's somebody that, again, that I think is very intriguing, that I'm going to, depending on how things play out here, if he ends up being the number 2 wide receiver here in this offense, somebody that I'm going to have a lot of. So let's go ahead and jump over to the running backs. The first guy, again, not a sleeper at all, is Tony Pollard. I think he's the best handcuff running back in 2021. He had 31 fantasy points in week 15 against San Francisco. He had 150 total yards, 2 touchdowns. We really need an injury to Zeke to really be, I think, a league winner. But I think that he's going to have some standalone upside, somebody that you could probably plug in a flex on certain weeks, because I think you could see the Cowboys this year kind of ease off of Zeke Elliott a little bit and not feed him this massive workload that we're typically used to seeing for Ezekiel Elliott, because he is getting older. He has a lot of touches on him, and they're paying him a lot of money. So I could see them use Tony Pollard a little bit more, maybe get him in there for 30, 40% of the touches and percent of the snaps, use him on some pass catching work as well. And I think Tony Pollard is an interesting guy, and something that I would feel comfortable taking in probably the 8th round, of your typical 12-team league. So I like Tony Pollard quite a bit, and somebody that I definitely am going to be doing whatever I can to come away with him in drafts. A couple more guys that I just kind of wanted to touch on that I think we should be paying attention to, while we're here mid-May. Jerick McKinnon, he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs a few weeks ago. He's likely going to split time with Darrell Williams to start out. But, I think he still showed he could be useful last year with San Francisco. Starting out the season, the first 4 weeks of the season, he had double-digit fantasy performances of 13.4, 13.7, 16.7, and 22.7 over that first 4 weeks, where he's seen at least 50% of the touches in each one of those weeks. And if you look at the rest of the season, it kind of fluctuated. But the other 2 weeks he had the rest of the year, where he had at least 50% of those snaps, 13.9 fantasy points in week 8 and 15.8 week 9. So he shows he still has something in the tank. He is 29 years old. He is older. He's had a lot of injuries. Obviously, the first couple of years in San Francisco didn't really work out, but they finally got him on the field last year. But this is a situation stepping in where we know Andy Reid is going to use another running back here. And I think Jerick McKinnon could end up being that guy that gets elevated over Darrell Williams. I know they like Darrell Williams a lot. He's somebody that they've kind of kept around. They trust him, but I think Jerick McKinnon could, eat up a little bit of this pass catching work from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I still think Clyde's fine, and I think he still probably gets 65 to 70% of the touches in this backfield. But I think Jerick McKinnon could be somebody, and especially if something happens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire like we saw last year where he went down. Jerick McKinnon could take over this backfield and be the number 1 running back here, and split times with Darrell Williams. So he's still a threat in the passing game as well. 33 receptions last year, 253 receiving yards, 22nd among all running backs, 7.7 yards per reception, which was 13th among all running backs. But he only played 39% of the snaps, 9 fantasy points per game, 1.22 yards created per touch, which was 31st, and 1.27 yards per route run, which is 18th among all running backs. So Jerick McKinnon is someone I have on my radar. I'm not going to take him high. I think, too high. I think 12th, 13th round, I think is fine. And I think, that is a good spot to take him, especially in PPR format. So a couple other guys I just wanted to hit on. Chuba Hubbard, we kind of talked about last week if you watched the Risers and Followers show, but Chuba Hubbard, for me, I think is somebody that, if anything happens to CMC, that he is gonna be the guy that takes over this backfield. They have nobody else there. Mike Davis is gone now in Atlanta, so I like Chuba Hubbard as kind of a bench stash to kind of see what happens. If something does happen to Christian McCaffrey, that Chuba Hubbard could take over this backfield. So in an offense that I think is ascending, so I like him. Malcolm Brown is another guy that he signed in Miami, and they really hyped him up in Miami. Now I still think it's Myles Gaskin's backfield, but if anything happens to Myles Gaskin or he struggles at all, I wouldn't be surprised if Malcolm Brown kind of soaked up more of this backfield, and which was a really good backfield to be in last year. We saw Myles Gaskin played very well last year, as well as Salvin Ahmed, who took over and got some opportunities as well when Myles Gaskin got hurt. But whenever Gaskin came back, he took back over that backfield. I still think it's his backfield to own. But Malcolm Brown, again, another guy that I think that is a capable backup and somebody that could end up being somebody that you're scrambling to add for during a waiver wire period. So the other guy is Rashad Penny. Listen, we've been waiting for this guy to break out. The Seahawks drafted him in the first round. He's never really panned out. He's had injuries. Last year was kind of a wasted year because of the injury he had the year before, and it took forever for him to come back. But this is kind of a make or break it year for him if he's ever going to make it in the NFL. Now, Chris Carson is still there, but Chris Carson's not young. Chris Carson's 27 years old. Like, this is definitely Chris Carson's last couple of years in the league. So Rashad Penny could possibly take over this backfield. We know that Seattle has no problem with running two running backs here. So I think Rashad Penny is another interesting guy, especially if something happens to Chris Carson, who has been injury prone himself. So if Rashad Penny, I think looking at him, taking him 13th, 14th round is kind of a bench stash to see what they do here, because, again, they didn't really do anything to add anything to the running back room here. So, unless they do something crazy over the next, couple of months, I think Rashad Penny is somebody that I would definitely be keeping an eye on. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about at least one tight end that I think that people should be keeping on their radar, and that's Adam Troutman, second-year tight end from Dayton. Not an overly athletic guy, but he does have an upper 95th percentile agility score with 1105 there. But he only played 47% of the snaps last year. Didn't get a ton of opportunity. Only 15 receptions, 171 yards. 3.8 fantasy points per game, but he is taking over as the number one tight end in this offense. And we kind of talked about with Traquan, there's not a lot of mouths to feed here now. Really, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas are the two main focuses, but past that, they don't have a whole lot else. Jared Cook went on. He's now with the Chargers. So Adam Troutman is that late round tight end that I really like to really target this year. I think, in a Sean Payton offense. So I really want to get my hands on some Adam Troutman as a late round tight end. There's a few other guys we'll talk about, down the line that I like as well. But Adam Troutman is a guy that I don't mind taking a swing at later in drafts. So other than that, I think that's pretty much all I have to, all the guys we have to talk about today. I really appreciate everybody checking out the show. And again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for future content. We got a lot of good stuff coming out. I appreciate it. And we'll until the next one. Peace.